I don't know if this is they're looking at it as revenge, because it's not like the Lions have actually clinched a playoff spot or won anything significant. I mean, the Rams definitely have. They won a Super Bowl. But the Jared Goff, Matt Stafford trade a couple of years later, as it stands right now, I feel like Jared Goff's a better quarterback than Matt Stafford.
But Super Bowl goes to the Rams.
100%. And
I mean, that's just always going to be the leveling piece of all of this, is that it's just that it goes back to them winning the Super Bowl, with Matthew Stafford coming there for 1 year.
And Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, he talked about the development of one Jared Goff. Let's take a listen to DC.
I mean, he's a better quarterback than he was there, in my opinion, because he can do more things. He's mentally on it. I mean, we've come light years ahead of where he was 2 years ago when we walked in and just started teaching him protections and really dove into that. And he's got a real good grasp of what we're doing, where the issues are, where the problems are. And that's something that we really wanted him to get good at, and he wanted to get good at. And he's worked at it, and he's improved. So that helps you.
Now, all credit to Jared Goff, who... Look, that's a tough spot for a guy when you're supposed to be the face of the franchise. You get to a Super Bowl, you come up short, you're playing the Patriots, and then just the way things ended there, he was kind of looked at as the scapegoat. He wasn't all that healthy. They could have started him in a playoff game at Seattle. They decided not to start him. Then their backup, John Wofford, goes in, gets hurt. Jared Goff comes in early. They win that game on the road. Then they're really competitive at Green Bay the following week, in which Aaron Donald got hurt. Goff with the broken hand and bum hand wasn't nearly 100%, but they were in that football game for a majority of that game. And then you get to the offseason, and you're the scapegoat, and you're the missing piece at that position, and they go out and they trade for Matt Stafford, and they send Jared Goff to Detroit, a bad situation, and then your ex ends up winning a Super Bowl while you're sitting in Detroit with all of your teammates, all of the relationships you built, and he never complained about it. There was no outburst. There was no, he didn't take shots at anybody. He just kept his head down, kept working, and now we are 2 years later, and I totally agree with Dan Campbell. I think he's a better quarterback, and I think it's a testament to Jared Goff for how he handled the situation, because that couldn't have been ideal. When you left Washington, if the very next year they won a Super Bowl, damn, that would hurt. That feels like that would bother you a little bit.
It wouldn't have hurt because I knew it wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
First of all. Second of all, as it applies to like Jared Goff, like they didn't they make it to the Super Bowl with Jared?
Yes.
All right. So it's not as though Jared Goff isn't sitting there looking at the scenario like, our team was good enough to make it to the Super Bowl with me. So the fact that we didn't win it, I mean, that doesn't, a lot of people said the reason why they didn't win in San Francisco when they went to the Super Bowl was because of their quarterback. And everybody's going to have their differing opinions of what something is. What substantiated the claim in LA is they brought in Matthew Stafford, and they were able to win it. It is what it is. If I'm Jared Goff, I'm not even living in the past of what I was when I was in Los Angeles. I'm living in the fact that I was drafted to be a franchise quarterback. He was not brought in as, like he's not a scrub. You know what I mean? Like, so Jared Goff comes from, being, I want to say, what was he drafted? I want to say.
Number one.
What was it?
He was number one overall.
Overall, yeah.
And Carson Wentz was too.
Yeah, so come on. Like know that you don't, by accident, get to that pick in the draft. Now, for whatever it's worth, Carson Wentz has fallen off the face of the planet in the way that he went over Niagara Falls with his career. But as it applies to Jared Goff, I think he's done extremely well. He's made it further than a lot of players have made it in the pro level. and
especially when you consider he was inactive his first week. You remember his first few games with Jeff Fisher? Like, they thought he was a bust. Like, there was bust talk with Jared Goff. So to your point, he's had a pretty good career, all things considered.
All things considered, and now he goes 9-8 last year with the Lions. The Lions are looking to be a team that possibly wins the division this year and could possibly be competitive, making it to the making a playoff run. I don't know how much I believe in that. I know that's what a lot of people out there are saying and predicting. But what I will say is the one thing that's most important in this scenario is that it seems as though you have a coach that believes in you.
Yep.
And to me, that's the singular biggest element that you want to have in play is that, well, the coach believes in you. If he feels like he's better here because we give him the ability to do more, then that's awesome. And you live with that and you ride with that and you go with that and you make that work. That's awesome. And that gives him a fair opportunity to achieve a certain level of success. You know, if they don't achieve that certain level of success as a team, does that fall on Jared Goff? I think it falls on everyone. It falls on the coaching staff. It falls on the quarterback. It falls on everybody else that's on the team. But for the most part, I look at Jared Goff and I say he's been a good quarterback for the Detroit Lions, and focus in on that. Focus in on that, because if I'm trying to focus in on substantiating it between LA and Detroit, for one, Detroit was not a team that was built to win the same way that the Los Angeles Rams were.
Right.
But then you watch the Rams fall off a cliff. You got one good year out of Matthew Stafford. One good year. Now, what happens now, I don't know. If Jared Goff continues to trend upward and Matthew Stafford disappears, if you want to use the Super Bowl to substantiate it, then you go right ahead. But the bottom line is, what do they feel in Detroit about Jared Goff? That's really all that matters at this point.
Yeah, and Dan Campbell, I think, loves him. And look, you actually did Jared Goff's first year at Detroit. You did the Lions-Browns game that November. Yep. And the Lions were winless going into that game, and they were also winless coming out of that game. And it's funny because Goff didn't play. It was Tim Boyle who was the starting quarterback because Goff had an oblique injury. But if I would have told you, leaving the booth of the game you called, hey, by the way, in like less than 2 years, the Lions are going to be favored to win their division, would you believe me?
No.
It's a pretty impressive turnaround.
But
headed.
That's addition by subtraction also. I mean, Minnesota claimed it this year. And Minnesota just doesn't want to be a playoff team. They just don't want to be a good playoff team.
What do you mean?
They just don't want to be a good playoff team.
We'd rather not participate.
We'd rather not do that. We'd rather not.
I'm not going to.
I'm not going to. But, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, let's be clear. This is the Aaron Rodgers effect. Now that Aaron Rodgers is not in the NFC North, I mean, you look at it and you say, okay, can the Bears catch up? Maybe they can.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. All right. I got to be honest, without Dalvin Cook and your defense not cooking like it has been for years, where are you at in Minnesota? So Minnesota could be dealing with the idea of maybe they might not be as explosive on offense as they have been. Maybe they will. I don't know. But I would say odds for me, if I'm betting on it, odds for me is to go with Minnesota until they prove otherwise. And then I would look at Detroit and see what happens there. Just too many question marks surrounding the Bears, too many question marks surrounding the Packers right now to put them at the top. But this is almost by default. I don't think that this is by dominance of Detroit. It's just by default.
See, I think we were going to get to this point anyways, Aaron Rodgers or not. Like Detroit swept them last year. Like
They
won that final game when everything was on the table for
They
Rodgers.
did.
You had cold weather, all
It
that.
was the
stuff.
playoffs, right? They could have made the playoffs.
Yeah, and it was win and get in, and the Lions ended up going on the road and winning that game. I love what Dan Campbell's done. I love what the Lions have done. The fact that they brought in all those players, and there's just a different vibe to them than there is in a lot of places you look around the NFL. And just to see all the, Chris Spielman, all of these respected guys trying to repair relationships with Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson and all that. I think what they've done is outstanding, and it's good to see for just the city of Detroit and for Lions fans where they're headed. And the fact that, Sean McVay was asked about it, and he's got to, sort of dance around the topic because he heard the quotes from Dan Campbell. Because Dan Campbell said he's a better quarterback now here than he was there, which if you're supposed to be this offensive guru, I don't know how that lands with you if you're Sean McVay. But, he talked about, he's playing at a high level. That's probably a fair assessment. And you could tell he was trying to be, just as professional as possible when it came to addressing all that. But if you're Sean McVay and you see the way you kind of alienated Goff at the end, and he was the de facto scapegoat of why you couldn't get over the hump, and you're looking around going, man, I don't even know if I want to coach anymore because I've been hinting at retirement, and I've got a quarterback who's coming back because of the money he's going to make, and physically we don't know if he can still get it done. I don't know if regret would be the right word, but I just wonder if Sean McVay gives a second thought to, could we have done this with Jared Goff at quarterback? Could we have done it that year with Goff at quarterback instead of Matt Stafford? And I think that's the big what-if question for the Rams that unfortunately we're never going to get an answer to.
I don't know that that's a what-if for them. They got their Super Bowl. They paid for their Super Bowl. Guys are dropping. I don't know what's going to happen with Stafford. Jalen Ramsey has left. They don't have Von Miller anymore. Aaron Donald, he's coming back, but, there's always the conversation of if this is his last season. It's just there are so many. Whitworth retired. I mean, there's just so many different variables at play in L.A. that, to me, I don't think they're thinking about what if with Jared Goff. I think they're thinking about what next for them as an organization and as a team. You got your Super Bowl, but now that's like in the distant past now. It's now what have you done for me lately? And so now they got to start figuring out how do you make that work for you now and thinking about something from the past when you were able to get a Super Bowl after you got rid of him and brought in someone new. I think it'll legitimize the move at that moment in time. So now you just got to figure out what legitimizes what you got going on moving forward.